Hi, I'm Geoff Boyce Cars, and this is not my smart Brabus. It's Gavin's, but I'll talk you through that in a moment. But it's mine for the next few days. It's pretty cool, isn't it? It is pretty cool. It's quite rapid as well. So here's the smart. You're probably wondering who the heck this guy is.
I wonder that all the time.
Do you want to introduce yourself?
So I'm Gavin, one of the Geoff's Insider group. I happen to be buying potentially a Geoff type of car. It's an old Freelander I've just bought, and it's just around the corner from Geoff. And I thought, what do I do with my smart car for a few days before I get back up here to pick it up? And I thought, I wonder who could drive about in a smart car and might enjoy it.
And there we go.
Yes.
And that's where the story starts. So this isn't just any smart car. This is a Brabus.
It is.
So tell the viewers about the Brabus.
So this is there's three models of smart cars, three generations. This is the middle one, the best one. The last one's a Renault Twingo. Don't want a Renault Twingo. This is 3-cylinder, 1 litre, turbo, 100 horsepower, 750 kilos. So think first generation Lotus Elise, and you're roughly on track. But yeah, 2 seats, flappy paddle gearbox, convertible. Which we will do. So designed because the Smart basically was the future of motoring and has now become not the future of motoring. When the Smart, wow, the pedals it's hard to drive in vans. When the Smart came out, it was basically the future. It was a tiny car that you could park anywhere, that cost nothing to run, and they were everywhere. And before you arrived today, I was thinking, do you remember when these cars came out? I do.
Smart cars were everywhere. Where'd they all gone?
The first generation, which often came in like left-hand drive from the continent.
Yep.
They were very much a different design. Yep. And they leaked. They had an atrociously slow gear change, very, very back and forth on the suspension.
Yeah.
They were a niche product. This is more like a normal, very small car, like a Fiat 500, that sort of car. So these are still around. The early ones, a lot of them disappeared. They leak like anything. They don't rust.
And so I had a Smart Roadster that I bought on a whim with a loose timing chain, but I still loved it. But what the problem was with the Roadster was leaking, basically. Yep. So the body would leak, which would then affect the electronics. So you'd buy a Smart Roadster that wouldn't lock, wouldn't respond to the remote central locking, and generally, like, such a small thing, like the fact that water's getting into the cabin, was ruining the cars.
It's, off the top of my head, they leak around the bottom of the windscreen,
exactly,
and the ECU is in the footwell, and the ECU rots.
That's right. And then the other problem that you had is, when they get to about 70,000 miles, the timing chain starts to loosen, which is a full engine out £700 job. You can probably correct me if I'm wrong there.
Sounds about right.
Which again means if you've bought a Smart Roadster for 1,100 quid and you need to spend £700 on it, you just don't, because they're not really worth that much money. However, I firmly believe that in terms of a classic car, these and the Roadsters are ones to buy now. Yes,
they're staying down in value. The R-Bar 595s have kind of hurt it because they're still a very short. They have a soft top option. They're quite nippy. So they've kind of stolen this niche in later years, but they're a metre shorter than the 500. These things are short. You can fit it in a parent and child drive parking space sideways,
which I will do for video.
Yes,
but we were just joking.
Trolley parks.
As I was parking it on, just reversing it near my house, I was joking that you can. I was looking behind me to see where my reversing space was, but it's literally the back of my head.
Yes.
There's probably a foot behind my head, and that's the end of the car.
Yeah, there's about 2 feet. You can check your passenger side blind spot looking through the rear window.
Brilliant.
It is that short. They've got manual mirrors and on them, because they're so small you can reach them from the driver's seat, so you don't need the auto stuff.
But anyway, back to the Smart being the future of motoring, right? Small, petrol powered, tiny displacement.
You said flooring it.
Cheeky.
You let me down.
No, I know. I'll do that in a minute.
Next one.
Oh yeah, next one. And instead, what the world has done, and they've forgotten about the smart car, which was lightweight with interchangeable panels and small consumer transport, and now they're trying to push everybody into electric cars instead. which have a gigantic carbon footprint before you even put any miles on the clock.
I mean, electric cars are great if you can turn a blind eye to all the batteries coming from China, mined by kids, with heavily subsidised electric power and subsidised car prices.
Yeah, let's just dwell on that for a moment, right? So you buy your electric car, the batteries for which are made from materials that are A, hard to find, B, finite, and C, cut out of the ground by very, very, very poor families, usually, in countries with very questionable human rights records. So when you're driving around in your electric car, right, with your toddlers in the back, I think it's important that people should think about that.
Yeah. I think it's most of the world's lithium comes from China and Africa. I think America only provides 10% of its own lithium. So you've got unionised, well-paid, safe jobs in the oil industry are disappearing in favour of mines for lithium and cobalt in Africa, China, Afghanistan.
Yep.
Is a huge potential market for that.
And let's just think, you're buying your electric car to save the planet. Maybe do a little bit of research on the harm that is caused by the mining of, all heavy metals, really. Not just the ones that are done badly in countries with very poor regulation and safety standards. So the whole thing of the electric car as an ability to feel good about yourself and your green carbon footprint and all the rest of it.
Go between.
It's, it's
speed humps.
It's bull, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's complete bull. It's marketing bump.
Yep. And it will make almost no difference when you consider how much pollutants places like China kick out.
Exactly. And I was thinking about this morning on the whole green thing. As we're on this, plastic straws, and you can't get a plastic straw anywhere anymore. You have to get a paper straw, which if you've got kids is useless. And single-use cups, they've been phased out.
Yeah.
But I tell you what hasn't been phased out, right? Plastic bottles from soft drink companies, they haven't been phased out. Soft drink companies are still allowed to make things out of plastic bottles, which is ridiculous. And Christmas. But if you think about it, Christmas and birthdays should basically be phased out if we're going to save the planet, because it was my 8-year-old's birthday. He's 9 today, actually. We're going bowling tonight and he wants to go out for a korma. That's exciting. But basically my wife last night went to buy some wrapping paper, which then immediately went in the bin.
Yep.
So if you want to save the planet, you have to get rid of wanton consumerism. But wanton consumerism is what drives the economy. So if you want to save the planet, you've actually got to destroy the economy.
Indeed. Yeah, basically. To a certain extent, kind of.
So what they should have done, instead of going down the road of electric cars, is done more stuff like this back onto cars. The smart car basically could have saved the world, because from memory, if I can just quote the MPG figures from when I had my Roadster, they don't use any fuel.
The standard ones can be quite good. Bear in mind they're not hybrids, and most of them aren't.
Exactly.
This one, thrashing it most places, I'm getting mid to low 40s to the gallon.
Yeah.
And it's kind of irresistible to nail it on a regular basis. The standard ones will get more. The diesels are particularly good. But one of the big things is the fact you've got half the volume and weight of materials compared to a normal car.
Absolutely.
You haven't got all the rare minerals that go into... I mean, this thing weighs less than a Tesla battery pack. Yeah, potholes.
Potholes are horrendous.
You learn to dodge them. You've got like 1 inch of suspension.
Is that an actual fact? Does it actually weigh less than a Tesla battery pack?
Pretty much. It must do. It's 700 kilos. And you look at how Teslas are over 2 tons, aren't they? The F-types.
Yeah, they are.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
It's there's very, very little in it. And they last. So, another smart. There's a friend he works at Smart Technic in Birmingham, a specialist service centre. The other week he had a pair of Smart 4.4s, which is the 4-door version. I really like those, and we'll be buying one for the channel. Combined, they had two of them had over 500,000 miles on them without an engine rebuild. That is incredible. But Smarts don't last. Is that the 1.5 diesel? No, I don't know the engines. I want to say they were 1 litre turbos again. Yeah. I want to say. I remember when I was looking for... We had a moment where we were looking for a car that was just cheap and incredibly cheap to run. And I was going on Auto Trader searching by price and MPG. And those were like insane off the charts for running costs. They're brilliant. Yeah, they're very low tax. When you thrash them, they do use fuel. But the standard turbo is 84 horse. It will do 45.50 to the gallon. And it's £30 a year tax. All of them though remap to the same, because they're the same engine basically. They remap to 130 brake, which in a 700 kilo car is pretty nippy, shall we say, for £30 a year road tax,
So
without a hybrid drive or any other rubbish like that.
That's absolute insanity. So really, if you're looking at saving the planet, you should buy an old used smart car instead of leasing a brand new electric car.
Yes, you want to get 2008 to 2014 are the middle generation. The latest ones are just Renault Twingos.
Yeah.
The originals,
And they don't look as good. They've lost the styling.
yeah, these ones I think have the best looks. You can get a late model turbo, not a Brabus, and they're reasonably cheap. They've got reasonable suspension if you're not tracking it, and they remap to 130 brake and still get 45-50 to the gallon. So
Amazing.
they're as good as any normal car for long trips. We've done South Wales to Cromer in Norfolk, 260 miles in one go without stopping.
Yeah, and that's not the nicest journey either.
It's a lot of motorways.
It's difficult going west to east and east to west in this country.
Yeah.
Can we just touch on values for the moment then? So yours is a Brabus with, what year is this car?
This is 2009. It's Brabus exclusive, so you've got heated seats, full leather interior, the big alloy wheels with skinny tyres, lowered suspension, gauges. You've got every feature available.
What is the profile of the tyres on these? Like 35?
The rears on the back are something like 225, 35, 17. They're about an inch of wall height or so.
Yeah.
And you've got about an inch of suspension travel. The rears are 16s. They are full-size tyres. So if you nail it, it does have kick down. There's a hard spring for kick down. So it will go all the way down, and it will drop it into second, I think, at this speed.
Should we do it?
Yeah, it's a bit of a weedy road, this, but I think it's evens out a little bit.
It's a bit of a delay, isn't there?
Yeah.
And then it hits the limiter. But that goes really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say it's under braked. Do you feel the same?
Yes and no. The brakes work very well, but the power assistance is very weak.
Yeah.
So you don't have all that sponginess you get, but it'll press hard and it will try and stand on its nose.
Got you, okay.
The traction control does like to kick in around roundabouts because you're trying to lean over.
Yeah.
And first gear is very, very short. It runs out, it hits the limiter in first at about 30.
Yeah.
And that's what the little beeping is on my little aftermarket gauge there.
Yeah. So what's your gauge reading there? We've got.
So it's got they don't really rust. One of the foibles on these is if the engine mount wears, the engine can rock a bit back and forth. If it does that, the water pipe rubs on the chassis. If the water pipe ruptures, it dumps all the coolant and your temperature drops, so the alarms don't go off. The first you know about the fact that you've lost all coolant is when the entire engine block overheats. Then the warning light comes on and the engine is scrapped. Hence, everyone gets little gauges that have a temperature readout. They fixed it in later years. So it's got temperature, boost, voltage and RPM, including a little shift beeper for if you're using the flappy paddles.
Can I ask a stupid technical question?
Yeah.
If you dump your coolant, why does the engine cool?
Because the temperature sensor is uncovered, so it's only in air, so it's got no water to read the temperature
Got
of.
you.
And until the block heats up, it doesn't change temperature.
I'd imagine that the block is getting pretty damn hot by that point.
These run quite cold as well, so this only runs about 85 Celsius.
Yeah.
The fans kick in at 95. Because the engine's under the boot floor and it's level with the bumper, they're very, very small engines. It's kind of packaged a bit like a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So that's why for a 1 litre turbo it only makes 130 brake, because the entire engine is about that high and about that wide. So they're very, very compact.
An entry level, good quality, non-Brabus, smart ForTwo is how much these days?
You'd be looking at £3,000 for it. Only get the turbo petrols. The non-turbos, the hybrids, or the diesels have problems and they're slow.
Yeah.
You get the normal turbo petrol, and you're looking at about £3,000 for a middle generation model with 50-60,000 miles. Convertibles are similar. Brabus generally double that. There is one on Auto Trader for £5,000. but it's from a dealer and they've got no description other than it's black.
Yeah.
That's it. They've got no internal photos and it's like £2,000 cheaper than any other car. But generally you're looking at £6-7 from a dealer for 60,000 mile car.
Yeah. So have the Brabus cars gone up in the last couple of years? Because I seem to remember they were cheaper than that.
They have gone up a bit because they don't have a lot of the issues that more modern cars do, if that makes sense. They don't have all the fancy electronics that can go wrong. They're really nice to work on because they've got big knobs.
Big knobs!
Yes, and this one's got another one on the stereo as well.
It does.
And you can just do all that wiring yourself. You don't have touch screens, you don't have silly electronics to muck about with. So yeah, they have started creeping up in value. Also, if people don't maintain them, if they don't service them with someone who knows smarts, they don't last. And people like them, people use them because they're economical, and they're getting over 100,000. And then what happens is something goes wrong, or you've not looked after the engine and it needs work, and suddenly you've got a big bill and they just disappear. But yeah, the Brabuses are getting hard to find when they've been well looked after, and they are, I think, Lupo GTI, but you've got boost instead of a 16 valve engine. They're a metre shorter than a Lupo GTI, and they are very practical cars for a commuter. They're great fun. Just look after it and it'll drive like any other little high performance car. And trying to find someone with this sort of power to weight ratio with such low tax and insurance that's as nippy and fun to drive is really tricky now. Like I said, the nearest is a Arbor 595 and they are not cheap.
No, they're not, aren't they? Like 15 grand?
Yeah, and you're turning right after this house.
I am indeed. Well, brilliant. That was a real good rundown of smart ownership and my first introduction to the Brabus. I think we covered off a few things there. So what we'll do is we'll end the video there and then we'll talk Freelanders. I get it. I absolutely get it. It's just an absolute hoot. So you can drive everywhere flat out, paying no money in tax and no money on fuel because it's a really economical car. So you can keep your 300, 400, 500 horsepower cars. What you need is a Brabus Smart. I got flappy paddles like a Ferrari. Should we flappy paddle it? So I click the button on the gear stick to go into manual mode, like a 360 F1. Just call me Michael Schumacher. Oh no, there's a police car next to me. Don't call me Michael Schumacher. Sensibly does it. Don't know if that's a police officer or a highways officer. They're not the same thing, are they? Traffic officer. Is that the one with the cones or the one with the handcuffs? I think it's the one with the cones. Do you risk it though? Really? Are you that much of a knob?